future that was born 100 years ago. I am the purpose that emerged with India's independence to be a force for business that makes doing good our business. Towards an independence where knowledge sets us free. To think big and achieve bigger. To take India to the world and the world to India. Creating pathways of self-reliance. To stand for progress, the planet and the people. Towards a future made perfect. And be a force creating abundance. Because independence is not a moment in history. It's a never-ending path to prosperity. Aditya Birla Group, a force for good.
कस्टमर लॉयल्टी रिवॉर्ड 55 इंच का टीवी 4,999 रुपए में. Too good to be true.
अननोन कंपनी अननोन सेंडर यानी पक्का स्कैम. केस सॉल्व.
करेक्ट. स्कैम के खिलाफ गूगल के साथ आओ. स्कैम पहचानो, मौका कमाओ.
Imagination in flight begins with a sheet of paper, a couple folds, and a simple throw. But for some, the exhilaration and wonder behind flight never fades. At GE Aerospace, we turn what-ifs into what's next. Because when the right idea catches the wind, there's no limit to how far the next generation will go.
In every step, there's a spark of joy. A little sparkle, through laughter, through friendship, through streets that tell 1,000 stories. With Bata, make your way to the moments that matter with Brighter Moments collection. This festive season, style begins at ₹799. Bata, make your way. Visit your nearest Bata store.
Blessed with breathtaking natural beauty, vibrant tribal culture, and rich heritage its identity. Where there are vast reserves of mineral wealth, the new growth engine of New India. Writing a new saga of development under good governance. Chhattisgarh. A state like no other. From Bastar to Sarguja. Chhattisgarhia, sable badhiya.
वात्सल्य ये किसने दिया?
ये हमने दिया है। सभी चाहते हैं अपने बच्चों की आज की नहीं कल की जरूरतों को भी पूरा करें। इसीलिए हमने चुना है एनपीएस वात्सल्य, जो सालाना 1000 रुपए के निवेश से भी शुरू हो जाता है।
एनपीएस वात्सल्य आप 18 वर्ष तक के बच्चों के लिए ले सकते हैं, जो 18 वर्ष बाद खुद ही एनपीएस अकाउंट में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा।
इसीलिए कहता हूँ हर उम्र के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है।
There are moments in a nation's journey when the sunlight awakens a new dawn of possibilities. As India stood at a crossroad of need and possibility, REC emerged, not as a company, but as a quiet resolve. REC was incorporated to resurrect the agriculture sector by energizing irrigation pump sets, marking a giant leap for the Indian agrarian economy. Since then, we have diversified into new technologies and financed over 100,000 megawatt of energy. We are now one of the biggest financial institutions in the country, funding generation, transmission, distribution, and renewable energy projects. The future is now, and we are constantly reinventing ourselves to stay ahead of the times.
As India strides towards the vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047, CGEW-HO stands committed to building not just homes, but a foundation of dignity, welfare, and inclusive progress for the backbone of our nation, our central government employees. This year's theme, Urban Solutions to Crisis, speaks directly to the heart of CGEW-HO's mission, a mission they've upheld for over 35 years, and that is to serve those who serve the nation. From its inception, CGEW-HO has seen housing not just as infrastructure, but as a right, a vital foundation for inclusive and dignified urban living. With a pan-India footprint, CGEW-HO has successfully delivered quality housing projects across the nation, from metros to emerging cities, ensuring that central government employees have access to secure and affordable homes wherever duty takes them. The year 2024-25 marked significant progress. Among its proudest milestones is the Chennai Phase 3 project, delivered at just 2,600 rupees per square foot, nearly half the local market rate. Despite limited scope compared to private developers, CGEW-HO recorded dwelling unit sales worth 821 crore rupees in the last financial year, which is a testament to its financial prudence, transparency, and commitment to affordable housing. Several other projects in Greater Noida, Kolkata, SAS Nagar, Mohali, Punjab, and Visakhapatnam are progressing steadily, guided by strict timelines and quality benchmarks. Looking ahead, CGEW-HO is actively planning future developments in Greater Noida Phase 3, Meerut, Bhopal, Vaishali, and Navi Mumbai. They are also in the process of acquiring prime land in cities like Lucknow, Raipur, Kolkata, and Puducherry. A nationwide demand survey across 16 urban centers is shaping this strategy, ensuring each project aligns with the evolving needs of government employees. Transparency remains a cornerstone. All current projects are RERA registered, with third-party audits by premier institutes like IITs and government engineering colleges. Participatory monitoring committees involving allottees and ministry officials ensure oversight, trust, and community-driven execution. CGEW-HO is also embracing the future from sustainable construction methods to digital service delivery for applications, tracking, and grievance redressal. New formats are on the horizon, including compact housing and senior citizen-friendly designs, reflecting the diverse needs of today's government workforce. These achievements are the result of tireless efforts by CGEW-HO staff, with steadfast guidance from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and its governing bodies. CGEW-HO renews its promise, not just to build houses, but to create homes of dignity, equality, and opportunity for those who serve the nation and for generations to come.
say that dedicated freight corridor is the jewel of Indian railways.
India dreamt of a new future with a faster, safer and smarter freight network. A vision to create a dedicated pathway for the nation's lifeline, its cargo. That vision became a mission. Dedicated freight corridors.
उगती हुई हरियाली में, सोने सी हर बाली में, हर सुबह चाय की प्याली में और घर घर की खुशहाली में, प्रदूषण मुक्त हो आसमान, दुनिया भर में अपने निशान, आत्मनिर्भर हिंदुस्तान, गेल इंडिया जिसकी पहचान।
Every great journey begins with a resolute step. India's journey in infrastructure started with early recognition of its importance, which gained traction from the mid-2000s onwards. Established in 2006 by the Government of India, India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited or IIFCL finances key infrastructure projects from roads and power to renewable energy, airports, seaports and urban development. IIFCL, funding foundation of the future.
तू ही मेरी एक वजह है, तू ही मेरी ऊर्जा है, तू ही मेरी राहों का नूर, तू मेरा फ्यूल तुझी से मैं चलता हूँ, तेरे लिए जलता हूँ, तुझी से मैं हुआ मशहूर।
उत्तर के पहाड़ों से दक्षिण के किनारों तक, पहले इंडियन फिर ऑयल, इंडियन ऑयल।
प्लीज विद्या मेरी मदद कर दे। पर मेरा स्कूल बैग उठाना पड़ेगा। पक्का। स्कूल प्रोजेक्ट बनाना है ग्रीन एनर्जी पर, और मुझे कुछ नहीं पता। ग्रीन एनर्जी मतलब रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, जैसे सोलर और विंड एनर्जी।
With the aim to achieve half of installed capacity from clean energy sources, we are creating a greener future because every step we take nature along.
मेरा बैग।
From oil-rich lands where dreams ignite, Oil India Limited fuels the nation day and night. As India's flag bearer in oil and natural gas exploration, we have been powering dreams for over 60 years. With operations spanning 7 countries, we drive industries, energize economies, and spark innovation. Rooted in legacy, committed to sustainability, we are building futures, uplifting communities, and empowering generations. A Maharatna of India, proud and true, Oil India Limited, energizing lives for you.
RVNL today has evolved into a global infrastructure powerhouse, laying the foundations of a future-ready India. From railways to metros, from highways to harbours, from tunnels to solar power, RVNL is transforming the infrastructure landscape across India and beyond. From concept to commissioning, Rail Vikas Nigam Limited, empowering progress, delivering excellence.
and welcome to the grand inauguration of the HT Leadership Summit. As we begin this year's journey of insight and inspiration, we proudly present a theme, Transforming Tomorrow. This year, the summit focuses on the innovation, resilience, and reinvention shaping our future. From groundbreaking technology to shifting global dynamics, the summit brings together voices that are redefining what lies ahead. Join us as we dive into powerful and inspiring conversations starting today. We kickstart the HT Leadership Summit with a compelling session featuring Srinivas Narayanan, CTO of B2B applications at OpenAI. A seasoned technology leader, Narayanan heads the engineering teams that translate OpenAI's cutting-edge research into enterprise and developer products used around the world. Prior to OpenAI, he held key leadership roles during Meta's hypergrowth years, serving as Vice President of Engineering and leading the AI Applied Research and Engineering Group, where his work shaped technologies that reached billions globally. This insightful conversation, as Srinivas Narayanan sheds light on the future of AI, will be moderated by Vishal Mathur, HT's technology editor.
Hello and welcome to this session of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit 2025. Joining us today is Srinivas Narayanan, who is the CTO for B2B applications at OpenAI. We all get excited about artificial intelligence these days, but little may you know, Srinivas created his first AI program way back in 1994. That first twist was an AI chess program. Here and now, he leads all the engineering efforts across OpenAI's products. That's not easy considering the scale at which OpenAI operates. The ChatGPT application, for instance, has more than 700 million active users and counting. Previously, Srinivas has worked at Meta and led large teams there as well. So clearly scale doesn't bother him at all. Thank you so much, Srinivas, for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here. And first, I want to say a big hi to your audience. Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm not there in person, but hopefully this is a fun conversation over the next 30 minutes or so. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Srinivas. Let me jump in with the first question, and it's more about engineering at scale. We've already established the millions of users that ChatGPT, for example, serves. The context is wildly different. The devices that people use this on are very, very different too. From an engineering standpoint, how difficult is it to get everything to work perfectly and to build at this level of scale? And I mean, does it really complicate things when models get even more capable?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, ChatGPT has over 800 million users who use our product every week. And to build that for a global audience has a really interesting set of challenges. We think of it in a few different layers. There is the intelligence layer, and how do we scale intelligence to the vast user base? We think about it from an infrastructure perspective, and we also think about it from a product perspective. Let me cover what I mean by each of these a little bit, right? So from an intelligence perspective, you want the models to be useful for all audiences all over the world. And as you well know, people speak lots of different languages. There is cultural sensitivities. And so one of the really interesting things that we have to think about is how do we make our models great in the languages people speak? How do we make it great for the use cases that they care about? Understand local culture, local context, etc. And in that regard, I actually want to talk about one recent work that we did called InQA, which is a data set that is very customized towards Indian context and Indian culture. And that's something that we developed with a research team to make our models better at that. So that's one aspect of scaling that's hard. Infrastructure, obviously, right? So serving users all over the world, how do you make it fast? How do you make it reliable? And one interesting challenge with AI is that as the models get smarter, we want to leverage the models for longer periods of time. The models think for longer periods of time. They're able to answer more complex questions. But as that complexity increases, you also need the infrastructure to run the models for longer periods of time. People still want fast responses independent of the complexity. So there's really the complexity grows, not just we are serving more users, but we're also serving more intelligence. And how do you make it cost effective? How do you make it fast, etc.? That's another interesting challenge. And the third, there is also a product challenge, which is when you have very general purpose models, they can do lots of different things. And in fact, we see ChatGPT being used for so many different use cases, from education to tutoring to financial help to coaching to creativity, etc. And one of the challenges is, how do you even teach people what all the different things that it can do? And a lot of people don't realize the vast enormity of things that ChatGPT can do for you, right? And AI can do for you more broadly. So how do you educate people, and how do you kind of bring out the different facets of the product to them is also a super interesting challenge. So yeah, super excited to be working on all of these things.
As these capabilities accelerate, how important would guardrails be as they evolve too, and how do you engineer these without them becoming bottlenecks at some stage?
So yeah, we think about safety at every step of the game, and that is really important because you have to kind of bake safety into the culture, into the model building process and the product development process. And if you think about it from a model building, it goes from what are the right data sets that you curate to how do you post-train the model to be thoughtful about how do you align this with human values. We also published really important research around preparedness framework, which is how do you evaluate frontier models on different dimensions of safety, right from whether they have different types of risks like chemical weaponry and biological weaponry risk to model autonomy to, there's lots of different aspects of risk that we care about. And so how do we create guardrails around this? How do you create evaluations around this? And so all of our model launches go through this process, and we have a very high bar for evaluating these models around these capabilities for what can be risky when we launch them. Then there is also when we deploy models, how do we monitor them for what happens in the real world? And so that, we can take action when we see models that might not be complying with the rules. Right? So that is also really interesting and important. So it goes all the way, like I said, from the model building process to the deployment process, and how do we monitor it at scale.
Srinivas, OpenAI is constantly in the news, be it some product launch, be it some infrastructure announcement, be it even the IPO speculation that keeps happening. As someone who's building product, how do you isolate the engineering focus from all the market theatrics? It must not be easy, I'm sure.
I think what I would say is, one, it shows that people really care about what we are building. So that's a huge amount of privilege and responsibility on us to make sure that the products we are building are having the kind of impact that we want in the real world. Our mission is to ensure AGI benefits all of humanity. And we take it very seriously. All this attention shows that there is a lot of care and interest in what we are building, and that's a good thing. At the same time, I think we also have teams that are really heads down and focused on building what really matters, right? So we focus on making sure that we are putting our energy behind building the products, advancing our mission, and actually doing things that are advancing the product roadmap and delivering positive impact for all of our users, whether it's our ChatGPT users, whether it's our developers, whether it's companies that are using our products. And that is really important. And that's really what drives us at the end of the day, is just continuing to make progress towards our mission. And so while, all the attention is interesting, we're also heads down. But another data point I would add is that some of our best moments happen when we have launches that are really moving the needle for the world. So to give you an example, we launched ImageGen back in, I think, March or April this year. And it was such an interesting moment that, the entire world took notice, right? And there were so many people who were creating really interesting artifacts. They were creating, Ghibli-style images. The Prime Minister posted something. Sachin Tendulkar posted something. I don't know if you saw all that. And those are also really inspiring moments for us, where it shows the impact that we are having on the world, and it shows the care that people have for our products. So all in all, we are blessed to be in this position, and we're blessed to be building products that are really reaching people at scale.
Srinivas, ChatGPT Atlas has been around for a while now. What's the North Star with this particular product, and how do you see AI browsers evolving in what I would say we are already in a post-traditional search world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with AI, you have this massive opportunity to reimagine how people consume information. And that's what we are seeing playing out, right? Which is people don't want to just enter search keywords and go click around, different links and consume all this stuff. AI is capable of synthesizing and summarizing information in a much more natural way. And what that means is that we have opportunities to build completely new products that can help people get information much more effectively in the future. So search was obviously one product that we launched, but browsers are places where we spend a lot of time consuming information on the web. And what we believe is that there is a new way in which AI can help us with that, doing that a lot more effectively. So for example, if you're going to any website, you can get contextual assistance, right? You can ask questions right there without having to copy context into ChatGPT and ask questions. You can just literally have a conversation on a sidebar while you're browsing a certain website. You can also have AI do more automated agentic actions on your behalf. Like if you want to fill a form, you don't have to go and fill out things repeatedly, and AI can do that for you, and it can operate on your behalf much more naturally. And even thinking more broadly, imagine having a personal assistant that actually deeply builds context about what you care about, what you're interested in, and that can help you proactively over time, right? Which has, it's not just about you going to a website and consuming information. If you actually understand underlying goals, a browser can be more proactive about providing that back to you, right? And so that's sort of, we see this big, broader opportunity to reimagine how we consume information, to reimagine how people get effective assistance through AI. And that's one of the, Atlas is our product towards doing that. And I think you're going to see us invest a lot more and do some more really interesting work in this field.
Switching focus to India for a moment, ChatGPT Go is free in the country, and the Learning Accelerator already has a lot of academic participation. What's OpenAI's larger India plan in the years to come? And do you see education as the beachhead for adoption here?
Absolutely. First, I would say our goal in India is to remove every barrier to adoption, right? We are making our technology more affordable, more accessible, and more capable for India. On the affordability side, we launched ChatGPT Go earlier this year. It's a new affordable plan for $399 a month, and we're also giving it out for free for a year. Accessibility, which is we are expanding local payment options. We are integrating with NPCI and Razorpay to allow people to make UPI payments for purchases directly within ChatGPT. And of course, we also integrated with UPI for subscriptions. And it talked about capabilities, right? So we want to make our model smarter for the Indian context. We wanted to understand local culture, and we launched InQA as a data set that allows us to do that. And we've been continuously improving the performance of our models over time. Education is a massive market. India is our second largest market for ChatGPT, one of the fastest growing. And we all know how people in India care a lot about education. So, that's been something we have thought about very deeply. And with that, we also announced plans which are focused on study mode is a great example, right? And so that's a place where, instead of just saying that people can come to ChatGPT to get education advice, it's a mode that is very specifically tailored for education, right? So it doesn't just give you the answers, it guides you along the way. And we've also built a bunch of partnerships with IIT Madras, for example, to do research on how AI is impacting education. We have partnered with various other organizations in India to give access to free for various students and for other educational organizations. So, this is a part of a broader initiative that we have done. And, this is something that we are super excited about. I think it's one of the most important use cases for AI.
Srinivas, AI companies never miss a chance to tell us that agentic AI is the next big thing. And equally, there are studies which kind of show that agents in the workplace still have some way to go. Do you believe the truth lies somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I think you generally see hyperbole in the press. On the one hand, AI is going to take over everything. On the other hand, you see studies that, enterprise AI, is not, 95% of them fail. Somebody today was joking that, 95% of enterprise AI fails and the rest 5% use OpenAI. But the truth is in the middle, right? So we are in the early stages of AI adoption spreading out to the world. And for enterprises, there are actually interesting challenges about how do you make AI understand the organizational context? How do you make it learn the different tools and applications that companies use? And we're going to build that, and we're going to build the agent platform, and we're going to build a set of connectors that makes it easy for companies to adopt AI. But the interesting thing is the models have evolved in intelligence quite a bit in the last year. And I think there is an amazing opportunity to put that to use in various companies. And you're already seeing some of these, like Codex is a great example. The entire field of software engineering has completely changed in the last 6 months, I would say, right? And we have every engineer within OpenAI is using Codex as an example, and they're so much more productive than before. So that's one early example of how you're seeing leading intelligence models and agentic AI playing out in the real world. And I would say Codex is just the tip of the iceberg. It's one example, but you're going to see that happen in every other field and in every other function. And that I think will happen quite a bit in the next year.
With AI models becoming so capable, like you mentioned over the last year itself, do you think the benchmarks that we're using now need a rework? And from that engineering standpoint, how do you create the evaluations to ensure there's real world context and there's that human element that AI companies look for in models?
Yeah, I think benchmarks are useful, and they're often a guide for advances in model capabilities. And there are a bunch of benchmarks we use for when we build new models and research them and we publish a model, right? But that's not the be all and end all. I think it's a useful indicator and it's a useful guide. But what is really important is also learning and understanding how our models perform in the real world. And we've been starting to do more work in that area as well. So we have, evaluations that are representative of economically useful tasks. Like, so GDP eval is one thing that we started publishing earlier this year. And what really matters at the end of the day is also how these model capabilities translate to useful, economically viable tasks in the real world, right? And so we have very deep engagements with customers. We understand how models are deployed, where they're adding value, where they're falling short. And we have a feedback loop, right? Which is we work with our customers, we understand where the models may be falling short, and then we have a team that helps create better evaluations so that the future models can improve on the things that our customers care about. So that I think is really important. And I think like I said, the research evaluations show a lot of potential, and I think they are often a harbinger of what new capabilities our models can bring to the real world. But we also have to complement them with real-world evaluations, customer success stories, and which we're doing quite a bit of as well, and we're going to continue to do that.
Srinivas, as we head into 2026, what big themes do you see emerging from the product side as well as the engineering side? I would not ask you for the themes for the next 12 months because that's a very, very long time in the AI space, but in terms of the broader themes, what do you see emerging next year?
You're going to continue to see models continue to grow in intelligence and that can work over longer time horizons and can, if you think about the evolution of intelligence, a couple of years ago, models would give you an answer to any question pretty immediately. But now models can think for a while. Often now you can think for a few hours before you can answer a question, right? So if you think about some of the most complex tasks, like whether it's math Olympiads or coding competitions, humans spend hours thinking about it, and our models can think about several hours before they can answer. But you can see that evolve over time. It shouldn't just be about multiple hours. We as humans think about problems over multiple days and multiple weeks and months. And so I think one dimension you're going to see is models are going to get better at thinking over longer and longer horizons. And they're going to be able to remember more things, right? And use that memory and context in the future to solve more complex problems. You're also going to see more agentic systems in the real world, like, going from AI can answer questions to AI that can act on your behalf, and AI that can coordinate with other agents to solve increasingly more complex workflows that we all care about. Multimodality is another dimension. You're going to see models get better at not just image generation, but also video generation, audio, and how do we blend all this more seamlessly to provide really interesting, rich visual information about everything. You're going to also see that come down to application interfaces can be much more dynamic and tailored to the task, right? And so, why are we all staring at the same interface for everything, right? So the ability to code and generate and run code dynamically will also lead us to richer interfaces over time. And you're also going to see more global inclusive deployment. I think we talked about, India is going to be very central to how AI is deployed in the real world. And I think it's one of the amazing things about India is just the energy and the excitement for AI is really high. And I see, I talk to people who are building incredibly rich set of applications, right? From, people who are building coding startups, not just for India, for the whole world. You're seeing people reform farming. Farmer Chat is a great example. We work with them and they've launched this to, I think, over 2 lakh farmers to help them give advice on farming, right? That's a great example. You're seeing people do legal startups, like, how do you reform giving justice for people with AI helping them. And so I think the breadth of use cases is staggering, and you're going to see that happen in the world. But India is going to be a great place where you're going to see this happen, both people building for the Indian audience, but also amazing entrepreneurs in India building for a global audience, right? And so I think this global inclusive deployment is going to be a major theme. And one more thing I'm super excited by, I would say, is that you're starting to see the signs of AI helping in deep scientific discovery, right? Can AI help us advance science? Can it lead to us creating new insights much better and much faster? And I think you're starting to see the early signs of it. And that's one area that I'm super excited by is can AI help us discover better drugs? Can it accelerate science? Can it accelerate finding new energy sources? And there's lots of really amazing, interesting work happening at the intersection of AI and deep domain experts in these areas of science and physics and medicine. So that is also, I think, going to be incredibly exciting.
Thank you so much, Srinivas, for joining us.
Thank you.
I am the future that was born 100 years ago. I am the purpose that emerged with India's independence to be a force for business that makes doing good our business. Towards an independence where knowledge sets us free. To think big and achieve bigger. To take India to the world and the world to India. Creating pathways of self-reliance. To stand for progress, the planet and the people. Towards a future made perfect. And be a force creating abundance. Because independence is not a moment in history. It's a never-ending path to prosperity. Aditya Birla Group, a force for good.
कस्टमर लॉयल्टी रिवॉर्ड 55 इंच का टीवी 4,999 रुपए में. Too good to be true.
Unknown company, unknown sender. यानी पक्का स्कैम. Case solved.
Correct. स्कैम के खिलाफ गूगल के साथ आओ, स्कैम पहचानो, मौका कमाओ।
Imagination in flight begins with a sheet of paper, a couple folds, and a simple throw. But for some, the exhilaration and wonder behind flight never fades. At GE Aerospace, we turn what-ifs into what's next. Because when the right idea catches the wind, there's no limit to how far the next generation will go.
In every step, there's a spark of joy. A little sparkle through laughter, through friendship, through streets that tell 1,000 stories. With Bata, make your way to the moments that matter with Brighter Moments collection. This festive season, style begins at Rs 799. Bata, make your way. Visit your nearest Bata store.
Blessed with breathtaking natural beauty, vibrant tribal culture, and rich heritage its identity. Where there are vast reserves of mineral wealth, the new growth engine of New India, writing a new saga of development under good governance. Chhattisgarh, a state like no other, from Bastar to Sarguja. Chhattisgarhiya, sable badhiya.
NPS वात्सल्य, ये किसने दिया?
ये हमने दिया है। सभी चाहते हैं अपने बच्चों की आज की नहीं, कल की जरूरतों को भी पूरा करें। इसीलिए हमने चुना है NPS वात्सल्य, जो सालाना 1,000 रुपए के निवेश से भी शुरू हो जाता है।
NPS वात्सल्य आप 18 वर्ष तक के बच्चों के लिए ले सकते हैं, जो 18 वर्ष बाद खुद ही NPS अकाउंट में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा।
इसीलिए कहता हूँ, हर उम्र के लिए NPS जरूरी है।
There are moments in a nation's journey when the sunlight awakens a new dawn of possibilities. As India stood at a crossroad of need and possibility, REC emerged, not as a company, but as a quiet resolve. REC was incorporated to resurrect the agriculture sector by energizing irrigation pump sets, marking a giant leap for the Indian agrarian economy. Since then, we have diversified into new technologies and financed over 100,000 megawatt of energy. We are now one of the biggest financial institutions in the country, funding generation, transmission, distribution, and renewable energy projects. The future is now, and we are constantly reinventing ourselves to stay ahead of the times.
As India strides towards the vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047, CGEW stands committed to building not just homes, but a foundation of dignity, welfare, and inclusive progress for the backbone of our nation, our central government employees. This year's theme, Urban Solutions to Crisis, speaks directly to the heart of CGEWHO's mission, a mission they've upheld for over 35 years, and that is to serve those who serve the nation. From its inception, CGEWHO has seen housing not just as infrastructure, but as a right, a vital foundation for inclusive and dignified urban living. With a pan-India footprint, CGEWHO has successfully delivered quality housing projects across the nation, from metros to emerging cities, ensuring that central government employees have access to secure and affordable homes wherever duty takes them. The year 2024 to 25 marked significant progress. Among its proudest milestones is the Chennai Phase 3 project, delivered at just 2,600 rupees per square foot, nearly half the local market rate. Despite limited scope compared to private developers, CGEWHO recorded dwelling unit sales worth 821 crore rupees in the last financial year, which is a testament to its financial prudence, transparency, and commitment to affordable housing. Several other projects in Greater Noida, Kolkata, SAS Nagar, Mohali, Punjab, and Visakhapatnam are progressing steadily, guided by strict timelines and quality benchmarks. Looking ahead, CGEWHO is actively planning future developments in Greater Noida Phase 3, Meerut, Bhopal, Vaishali, and Navi Mumbai. They are also in the process of acquiring prime land in cities like Lucknow, Raipur, Kolkata, and Puducherry. A nationwide demand survey across 16 urban centers is shaping this strategy, ensuring each project aligns with the evolving needs of government employees. Transparency remains a cornerstone. All current projects are RERA registered with third-party audits by premier institutes like IITs and government engineering colleges. Participatory monitoring committees involving allottees and ministry officials ensure oversight, trust, and community-driven execution. CGEWHO is also embracing the future from sustainable construction methods to digital service delivery for applications, tracking, and grievance redressal. New formats are on the horizon, including compact housing and senior citizen-friendly designs, reflecting the diverse needs of today's government workforce. These achievements are the result of tireless efforts by CGEWHO staff, with steadfast guidance from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and its governing bodies. CGEWHO renews its promise, not just to build houses, but to create homes of dignity, equality, and opportunity for those who serve the nation and for generations to come.
I would say that dedicated freight corridor is the jewel of Indian Railways.
India dreamt of a new future with a faster, safer and smarter freight network. A vision to create a dedicated pathway for the nation's lifeline, its cargo. That vision became a mission. Dedicated freight corridors.
उगती हुई हरियाली में, सोने सी हर बाली में, हर सुबह चाय की प्याली में और घर घर की खुशहाली में, प्रदूषण मुक्त हो आसमान, दुनिया भर में अपने निशान, आत्मनिर्भर हिंदुस्तान, गेल इंडिया जिसकी पहचान।
Every great journey begins with a resolute step. India's journey in infrastructure started with early recognition of its importance, which gained traction from the mid-2000s onwards. Established in 2006 by the Government of India, India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited or IIFCL finances key infrastructure projects from roads and power to renewable energy, airports, seaports and urban development. IIFCL, funding foundation of the future.
तू ही मेरी एक वजह है, तू ही मेरी ऊर्जा है, तू ही मेरी राहों का नूर, तू मेरा फ्यूल तुझी से मैं चलता हूँ, तेरे लिए जलता हूँ, तुझी से मैं हुआ मशहूर।
उत्तर के पहाड़ों से दक्षिण के किनारों तक पहले इंडियन, फिर ऑयल, इंडियन ऑयल।
प्लीज विद्या मेरी मदद कर दे। मेरा स्कूल बैग उठाना पड़ेगा पक्का। स्कूल प्रोजेक्ट बनाना है ग्रीन एनर्जी पर, और मुझे कुछ नहीं पता। ग्रीन एनर्जी मतलब रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, जैसे सोलर और विंड एनर्जी।
With the aim to achieve half of installed capacity from clean energy sources, we are creating a greener future because every step we take nature along.
मेरा बैग।
From oil-rich lands where dreams ignite, Oil India Limited fuels the nation day and night. As India's flag bearer in oil and natural gas exploration, we have been powering dreams for over 60 years. With operations spanning 7 countries, we drive industries, energize economies, and spark innovation. Rooted in legacy, committed to sustainability, we are building futures, uplifting communities, and empowering generations. A Maharatna of India, proud and true. Oil India Limited, energizing lives for you.
RVNL today has evolved into a global infrastructure powerhouse, laying the foundations of a future-ready India. From railways to metros, from highways to harbors, from tunnels to solar power, RVNL is transforming the infrastructure landscape across India and beyond. From concept to commissioning, Rail Vikas Nigam Limited, empowering progress, delivering excellence.
Up next at the HT Leadership Summit, we are joined by Ridham Desai, Managing Director and Chief Equity Strategist for India at Morgan Stanley. With over 3 decades of experience in equity markets, Desai is widely regarded as one of India's most influential market strategists, leading the country's top-ranked equity research team and shaping conversations on India's economic and market trajectory. Known for his long-term, fundamentals-driven investment approach, he is a sought-after voice across global media, policy forums, and investor communities. This discussion is moderated by Ravi Krishnan, Editor-in-Chief of Mint.
Welcome to the 23rd edition of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. Today we have with us Ridham Desai, a Managing Director at Morgan Stanley and an equities market veteran, somebody who has been bullish about Indian stocks for quite a long time. Thank you, Ridham, for joining us today and having this conversation at the HT Leadership Summit.
Thank you for hosting me. It's really lovely to be on this show.
So let's dive straight in. In your latest note talking about the outlook for Indian equities in 2026, you have said that Indian equities will regain their mojo this year. I'd like to know what makes you so confident.
Okay, so let me just step back a bit and explain why we've had a difficult trailing 12 months. Now, it may not seem so when you look at the Nifty or the Sensex, because both have been notching all-time highs. But the fact is that the world around us has been in a ferocious bull market. So if you look at the top 20 markets by, say, market capitalization, India has been the 20th or worst performing market. And everything around India is up between 20 and 70%. So this is staggering amount of underperformance. In fact, in US dollar terms, India has had its worst relative year since 1993. So let's keep that in mind. The absolute level of the Nifty, kind of masks that underperformance that India has suffered. Now, why did that happen? I think the proximate reasons are three. One is coming into the September quarter last year, India started facing a slowdown in its economic growth, which I think was a combination of both tightness by the RBI in terms of policy, rates, liquidity, and regulatory burden on the banking sector, as well as the fact that government expenditure slowed down due to idiosyncratic reasons, elections, heavy rains. So when we arrived in October, India's growth started slowing down. I term it as a mid-cycle growth slowdown. It wasn't the end of the cycle. We had actually done quite well in the preceding 3 or 4 years, and we were experiencing a mid-cycle consolidation. And the other reason was that India's relative valuations versus emerging markets, a cohort that India is usually compared with, were at all-time highs at the end of September last year. So clearly the valuations were not favoring India. We saw some policy pivots in China. And then as we entered into 2026, the world migrated into a massive AI trade. And India is striking for its lack of any direct AI play. So the thing that investors, especially tourist money around the world, wanted to buy was AI. India didn't offer that. So these were the reasons. Now, as we look forward, in fact, India's relative performance is already turned in the month of November. We've beaten the index by about 300 basis points. So we're recouping some of our lost ground. And this has come on the back of a big policy pivot that India itself made, starting in February with rate cuts. Then in April, with both a rate cut as well as a CRR cut, which, by the way, has happened only twice in India's history. Once during in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, and then the second time during COVID. April 2025 did not represent any such crisis. So it was quite an exceptional move by the central bank. And the central bank has backed this with massive doses of liquidity, as well as easing of regulatory burden on the banking sector. Now, I may just pause here and tell viewers that India's growth has already started to turn. And if you look at the bank credit growth in the month of October, consumer credit has already accelerated from a low of 7% to near about 17% ex-mortgage. So the policy that the RBI put out already started making its way into the economy. The government has then backed this with a slew of reforms, which I will not recap here because I think everybody knows GST and a lot of other things that are happening. And so I think the growth slowdown is behind us. We're seeing this in real growth data, but frankly, from an equity market standpoint, we need acceleration in nominal growth because that is what earnings depend on. So nominal growth has still not moved, not at least till the end of September quarter. But I reckon as you go into 2026, we're dealing with nominal growth, which will be into double digits, which will then be accompanied by a pretty strong recovery in earnings. I dare say India may actually be the first growth in the world in terms of earnings, let alone GDP growth, which we know India is already the fastest. The second thing is that the valuations have corrected. So if you go to October, because we moved a bit in November, but at the end of October, India's relative valuations were near about all-time lows. So from all-time highs, we've gone down to all-time lows. And while I'm not an expert on global AI trade, I think a lot of it is in the bag. And at the margin, I think that trade is likely to attract less capital, less tourist money. So it's less of a headwind for India. So put all of this together, I think it is looking like a very exciting year for Indian equities.
Great. That was a detailed answer. There are one or two threads from that which I would like to pick up. One is, you're talking about this, the investments which were flowing into global AI stocks now not being much of an headwind. But on the flip side, I mean, do you see that as some kind of a bubble? What will be the effect of such a bubble sort of imploding, and what will be its effect on Indian equities? Would you look at that as the biggest risk?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk is a slowdown in global growth, which incidentally we're not anticipating. It's not our base case that India's growth will slow down. Global growth will slow down. It will slow down a little bit, but not a lot. And just allow me a moment here to explain why, because this is very important, I think, for people to understand. So we're entering into 2026 with unprecedented stimulus across all the major economic zones, whether it's the US, both fiscal and monetary, Europe, both fiscal and monetary, Japan, largely fiscal, and China, both fiscal and monetary. This has not happened since 2008. So in response to the global financial crisis, we had synchronous policy stimulus across the world. And then since then, the world has had asynchronous policy responses. This policy response that is coming is largely in response to the tariff that the US has been levying across the world. And economies are taking idiosyncratic decisions to protect themselves from the after effects of these tariffs. So the resultant thing is that we're entering into a period with pretty large stimulus. India has already done its thing in 2025, but others are actually also continuing to do this in 26. So the downside to global economic growth seems contained. Without this stimulus, we probably may have got a lot more downside as a consequence of tariffs. We were not getting it. So the biggest risk to India is that this thing does not work out and the stimulus falls short of requirement, and there is some untoward global event like a war or something of that sort, which then starts affecting global growth. India needs a little bit of support from global growth to ensure that its own economically powers ahead. So in my mind, that is the biggest risk. Now, on your question with respect to the AI so-called quote-unquote bubble, I'm not an expert on this, but I don't see this as a bubble as yet. Everybody is warning us it's a bubble. And just going by my experience with markets spanning 35 years, when everybody is calling it a bubble, it usually has more legs to go than we all think. So yeah, it may eventually prove to be a bubble, but it just doesn't seem we are there as yet. The markets are still fairly orderly. They've not become, completely crazy. They could get there during cracks, but it's not happened. Now, if we get into a bubble and it crashes, it will pull down stock prices everywhere in the world. The good news and the bad news is as follows. The good news is that India is a low beta market, so it will outperform handsomely. The bad news is that it will be hard to contain the downside in absolute terms. So then the Nifty will probably head towards our bear case rather than towards our base or bull case.
So, I mean, given such a scenario and your base case, for the markets to climb in 2026, what would you advise investors on gold? Would you say that an aggressive investor should still hold maybe 10% in gold as a hedge?
If talking about the AI bubble is outside my competency, gold is totally outside my competency. So I would not want to really go into the territory on what people should do with gold. But I'll just spend a moment here on explaining what's happening, and then people can make their own portfolio call. So I think the world is certainly looking for a new currency anchor. That doesn't mean the dollar is done and dusted. When the pound started experiencing its downfall, it took a good 40 years before it got replaced by the US dollar. So it's not probably happening in our lifetime. We don't know that. But I think that is the immediate reason for why gold has been so well bid. I think 2022 marked a very crucial event for the appetite for gold, because it was the time when when there was embargo on a lot of Russian businesses around the world. And that's why central banks started diversifying. And their diversification, I think, has triggered this. So that's the story on gold. It is a long-term hedge on a shift in global currency dynamics, which may not have anything to do with what happens in 26, 27. Of course, the fact that the Fed is likely to cut interest rates, and we're expecting the Fed to do 3 rate cuts in the next year, or in fact, in the next few months itself, by June itself next year, I think may also play on what gold is up to. And, similarly on Bitcoin. So neither of them represent any areas where I would like to go in detail, but I think these are alternatives that the world is hedging itself with against any adverse currency dynamics. And one more point which I'll make here is that they should not be termed as assets. For me, an asset by definition is something that yields an income. So equities yield dividend, bonds yield your coupons, fixed deposits give you interest, property gives you rent. Quintessentially, Bitcoin and gold do not yield any income. So they're essentially stores of value. They're not assets. And in your mind, you should keep that when you're making a decision that what you're buying is a store of value. You could be potentially buying a medium of exchange. Right now, neither of them qualify as such. But you're definitely not buying an asset when you're buying these two. The difference, if you allow me a moment, the difference is that when you're buying an asset, there is an assessment you can make about fair value, which is you estimate the future income from that asset, and then you discount it at your expected rate of return. You can do that for dividends. It's the hardest to do for equities. It's quite easy to do for bonds because it's a fixed duration and fixed coupons. And then you arrive at a fair value and you compare that with the current price and make a decision on whether you want to allocate capital there or not. With gold and Bitcoin, no way to assess fair value. The fair value is what the next person in the queue is going to pay for it. And that is not something you can estimate. You can only guess. And that's the difference between gold, Bitcoin, and the rest.
Do you see a continued supply of paper in the primary markets acting as kind of a ceiling against the markets rising consistently? I mean, of course, we have retail SIPs continuing, so that will give, the equity rally legs. But this fresh supply of paper, which seems to be coming, what are your views there?
So I just hope that it continues and it gains momentum. It's very crucial for the progress of this bull market that companies raise capital and invest. Investment rate of the economy is directly correlated with corporate profits. And in the early stages of an economic boom, which I characterize the current situation as, an investment rate usually goes on, and then it takes a while for these investments to turn unproductive and for the cycle to end. So we are nowhere there at the moment. Raising of capital is a signal that companies are willing to deploy balance sheet, which is so important to sustaining this growth. And by the way, the government has already signaled that it wishes the private sector take up the heavy lifting. Coming out of COVID, the government did most of the heavy lifting and took capex higher, took the fiscal deficit higher, and is now clearly in fiscal consolidation mode. So the private sector needs to do that. So that's the macroeconomic angle. Now coming to the stock market perspective. So here's what's happening in the market. There is, as you cited, a daily bid that comes from retail investors who are, we can discuss this question later on, but I see a structural shift in household balance sheet. So this bid is not going away. And this bid is something like this. Now, there are only two other players in the market. You have corporate issuers and you have foreign investors. The corporate issuance is coming in here. So this is the amount of selling that foreigners have to do in order for a trade to happen. Otherwise, this bid cannot be satisfied. This is what's been happening the last 9 years. Domestic bid, corporate issuance, foreign selling. Now, foreign selling to become foreign buying, corporate issuances have to go here so that this becomes foreign buying. So ironically, for the market, technically, if everybody is eagerly waiting for the FPI bid, the issuances actually need to accelerate. And just one last point on issuances. Trailing 12 months, we're sitting at about 1.2, 1.3% of GDP. So it has potential to triple from here without actually upsetting the secondary markets. So we have a long way to go before this happens. In fact, that will also signal the peaking of the investment rate, which also I think has some distance to travel.
But Ridham, many of these IPOs which are coming, those are just about, they are about giving early investors an exit rather than the money that is being raised used to finance new capex. And we have been talking about a capex revivals for at least 2 years now. Are there any tangible signs that you see that it is actually turning?
So two things here. Of course, there are investors who exit. That capital then gets reinvested. Net, I think we're still raising money abroad amongst private equity funds. And if you look at what venture capital and private equity funds are saying, they're actually increasing their commitments to India. So they all have a 7-year or a 10-year cycle in which they have to book profits in existing funds. But net, I think they're going to bring capital back through new issuances, new funds, and that will flow into other businesses which need that capital. So I don't worry so much about it. There's a small nuance to this about multinational listings, and that is not a very large amount of money, but those are truly exits. That capital may not come back. And that I think is okay. The country is very large. The economy is very large. It can bear that. But that's not the capital that is coming back. The rest of it will get recycled and therefore is good for growth. Recycling of capital is good for growth. So private investments have been crawling higher. The fact is that the investment rate to GDP is currently at about 31.5%. And this has come off 500 basis points from the previous cycle low. About 2/3 of it has come from the government and 1/3 of it has come from the private sector. I think the mix will now change going forward. We think this number can go to say 36% before it peaks out. And it's quite likely that the remaining 4.5% will come all from the private sector. So that mix is likely to change. And I think we're seeing that selectively in certain sectors. Now, some of this data has gotten distorted because the economy did go through a bit of a slowdown. And then the uncertainty arising from US tariffs has also hurt, I think, investment plans. But I expect these things to settle down with the government fully behind growth and the RBI fully backing growth. I think confidence to renew capex plans will probably emerge in the next few weeks. In fact, I don't even think we'll have to wait for a few months.
This US tariffs has been one major factor, hanging over the economy and the markets for the past 12 months or so. How do you view the India-US trade deal that is in the making? I remember reading somewhere that you have argued that US tariffs really don't matter for India. Would you elaborate, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so you see, I have not yet cited that as a concern or as a reason for the market's underperformance. But that's not probably what you will hear if you talk to foreign investors. So foreign investors seem to be very focused on this. And it's more a signaling than material impact to the economy. So that goods under the tariff announcement made by the president of the US has affected about 1.2% of India's GDP. So as such, it is not so critical for performance of the economy. But of course, that 1.2 can create a drag. I want to have that drag of 30-40 basis points. So we want to put that behind us. But it's not a catastrophe for India. Now I know, and we all know from what's coming out in the press, is that a deal is underway and it's probably likely to come through before the end of the year, which will take that overhang away. And that's in our base case assumption for 2026, that this overhang will cease. Foreign investors will be quite actually positive about this. And you'll probably get a little bit of a pop on the Nifty. But it's not changing the secular story, which in any case in India's the situation is quite positive. So the US tariff deal is a good thing for India to have, but it has not been a problem so far for the market or for the economy as such.
What would be the themes that you would bet on, for the next decade or so? What are the big thematic stories that will emerge?
So see, I think we'll step back a little bit here. Why are multinational companies so excited about India? And the singular reason for their excitement is the consumer of this country. India has a unique income pyramid. It has cohorts running into millions of potential consumers in across income baskets, right from the bottom, where we still have a few very poor people living in sub-Sahara conditions, to the top, where we have 5 million households that can afford anything on the planet. This unique income pyramid makes India extremely attractive for anyone who wants to grow their business. And given our view that India is likely to account for 20% of incremental global growth over the next 15-20 years, and probably that number is rising, not falling. If you, depending on what product or service you sell to your consumers, India could be between 10 and 100% of a particular multinational company's growth over the next 10 years. So it is unavoidable. Because India is becoming far more important for your business, do it out of a factory in India. And this essentially sets the stage for a manufacturing revival. And of course, it's backed by policy. So it actually helps a manufacturing revival. So keep this in the background. India enjoys a very strong position in the global market, is likely to attract a fair amount of FDI in the coming years, and is likely to see an increasing share of manufacturing. On the other side, India is the only country that has actually nailed services exports at scale. Nobody has done that. And if you look at the services traded globally, that's actually growing much more than the manufacturing trade. So last year, for example, the world economic output was about $105 trillion. 65 trillion was services, 40 was manufacturing. Of the 40, 24 was traded. So 60% on average of the stuff that people around the world buy is not manufactured at their home country. It is manufactured outside. Of the 65 trillion, only 8 was traded. It was about 4 trillion 10 years ago. So the share of services in global trade has actually doubled in the increased materially over the last 10 years, and the absolute number has doubled. Now, I dare say, given all the geopolitics that is going around, manufacturing share in total output traded share may not increase going forward, because more and more countries are seeking to rebuild factories in their home countries. Services, on the other hand, has potential to grow a lot. Of the 65 trillion, we reckon about 40 can be traded. There's some stuff that cannot be traded, like your next meal or your next haircut. But there's a lot that can be traded. So 8 can go to 40. Now, India's market share of this 8, ex-tourism, is about 6%. I won't be surprised if India doubles this share in the next 10 years. And if you double the total amount of traded services in the next 10 years, that's a $2 trillion export opportunity. It's a 5-fold increase from where India is right now. It is enormous, and there's no competition. China is nowhere close to doing this. Nowhere. Anybody else doesn't have the scale that India has. So when you combine these two big macro backdrops, I think the thing that you will find is that the Indian consumer will be the toast of town, and everything relating to consumption, I think, will do well. From a stock market perspective, of course, at any point in time, you have to pay attention to valuations, because if you buy something very expensive, even if the business does well, you may not make money on the stock. So keep that in mind. But there are enough attractively priced consumer companies or shares that I think investors should look at. The second is, I think lending businesses will do also very well. India's starting point of private credit to GDP is somewhere in the mid-70s. And there's no reason for this not to go past 100 in the next 10 years. So lending businesses may actually outperform the economy. And the reason for this is there's been a dramatic psychological shift amongst younger generation. They're willing to spend their future, which older generations did not. My father did not. I have not done that. Now, this all ends very badly in the future, but that future is probably 50 years from now. The world, by the way, is grappling with this because it has spent its future away. India has yet to spend its future, but it will eventually. But when you spend your future, your near term actually gets better. Manufacturing, as I mentioned, I think inside that there are some interesting subsectoral opportunities. We're indigenizing defense. We're creating a supply chain in semiconductors. Shipbuilding is another interesting place. I think the whole electronic supply chain, because of the increasing home production of mobile phones, is another place to look at. So quite a few interesting manufacturing subsectors to look at. And finally, I'll just make one last point. Energy. I think it's a major theme. Last year, India consumed about 800 watts per person per day. That number compares with 9,000 in America. And it's a fraction of what the world does, especially the Western Hemisphere and China. And India's energy consumption is set to boom in the coming years. And that, I think, is going to lend its to great downstream opportunities as India's energy infrastructure gets created. So that's how I see sectoral opportunities.
Right. But energy in the short term, you seem to be not so gung-ho on it. I mean, are these valuation concerns or regulatory risks?
No, I don't know what you are referring to as energy here, but energy has got multiple buckets to it. So the supplier for the source of energy can be gas, coal, nuclear, oil. Oil is actually reducing share, so it's losing share. The others are gaining share, renewables, solar, wind. So there are multiple sources. So I think, you may be referring to oil here, which, we are kind of less constructive on oil because we don't think oil prices are going anywhere next year, which, by the way, is good for India's macro at the margin. But that's different from what I'm talking about. We're talking about the whole downstream, which includes energy infrastructure, which includes all the investments around energy, making it more efficient, making it more available. And, if you allow me, the SEB reform that the government has proposed, I think could be a game changer. Because if we can privatize even a handful of state electricity boards, the potential reduction in losses, the increasing efficiency, and the downstream effects of that, I think could, on its own alone, lift India's growth rate by 50 to 100 basis points. I mean, you don't need to do anything else other than that. That's how critical this reform measure could be.
Right. So those are the long-term bets you have. But in the short term, if you think that if money flows out of this US tech stocks, where will it flow into in India? Will it be IT stocks or will it be old economy sectors? How do you see that?
I think banks are probably where it comes. Selectively in some consumer names. I think IT services is very interesting. It's been at the receiving end of the AI trade. For some reason, people think it's the anti-AI trade. I don't agree. I think Indian IT services companies will actually benefit hugely from AI, will not lose out, and their next leg of growth will be largely AI related. So if you are a patient investor, and if you're willing to look through near-term underperformance, I think, IT services is a very interesting place. But at the margin, I think the easiest thing for foreign tourist money to buy is banks. Large, liquid, easy to understand. And the banks are also quite inexpensive relative to their own history. And we're seeing a revival in earnings. So I think that's the easiest thing to do. Actually, when I say banks, I should say lenders because I don't exclude the non-banks. So I say the lending businesses are the easiest ones right now.
If you have to make one call for 2026, which will be totally contrarian to the rest of the market, what will it be?
Nifty up 30%.
I think the consensus is that, the markets are going to rise.
30% is a crazy number. And if you get that, I don't think it's in anybody's head right now.
Yeah, that is actually higher than your bull case also, I guess, right?
Around there.
Okay. And finally, one last question. I mean, what would be your word of advice for retail investors?
I think they are the smartest people on this planet. And they fully understand that equities is a long duration asset class. It is not meant for annual trading or monthly trading. And most of them don't do all that. They just come in every month and buy some stuff. Keep increasing that allocation, especially if you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, because over 20, 30 years, the compounding of this will be enormous and will create a lot of wealth. So I think the best thing that retail investors could do, and by the way, they're doing that, so it's not really advice, but it's just highlighting what they're doing, is not losing faith. Understand that this country is on the throes of a major growth cycle, and equities would be the most beneficial asset class.
Thank you very much, Ridham, for this, taking the time out for this conversation.
Thank you.
I am the future that was born 100 years ago. I am the purpose that emerged with India's independence to be a force for business that makes doing good our business. Towards an independence where knowledge sets us free. To think big and achieve bigger. To take India to the world and the world to India. Creating pathways of self-reliance. To stand for progress, the planet and the people. Towards a future made perfect. And be a force creating abundance. Because independence is not a moment in history. It's a never-ending path to prosperity. Aditya Birla Group, a force for good.
कस्टमर लॉयल्टी रिवॉर्ड 55 इंच का टीवी 4,999 रुपए में. Too good to be true.
Unknown company, unknown sender. यानी पक्का स्कैम. केस सॉल्व्ड.
करेक्ट. स्कैम के खिलाफ गूगल के साथ आओ, स्कैम पहचानो, मौका कमाओ.
Imagination in flight begins with a sheet of paper, a couple folds, and a simple throw. But for some, the exhilaration and wonder behind flight never fades. At GE Aerospace, we turn what-ifs into what's next. Because when the right idea catches the wind, there's no limit to how far the next generation will go.
In every step, there's a spark of joy. A little sparkle through laughter, through friendship, through streets that tell 1,000 stories. With Bata, make your way to the moments that matter with Brighter Moments collection. This festive season, style begins at ₹799. Bata, make your way. Visit your nearest Bata store.
Blessed with breathtaking natural beauty, vibrant tribal culture, and rich heritage its identity. Where there are vast reserves of mineral wealth, the new growth engine of New India, writing a new saga of development under good governance. Chhattisgarh, a state like no other, from Bastar to Sarguja. Chhattisgarhiya, sable badhiya.
NPS वात्सल्य, ये किसने दिया?
ये हमने दिया है। सभी चाहते हैं अपने बच्चों की आज की नहीं, कल की जरूरतों को भी पूरा करें। इसीलिए हमने चुना है एनपीएस वात्सल्य, जो सालाना 1000 रुपए के निवेश से भी शुरू हो जाता है।
एनपीएस वात्सल्य आप 18 वर्ष तक के बच्चों के लिए ले सकते हैं, जो 18 वर्ष बाद खुद ही एनपीएस अकाउंट में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा।
इसीलिए कहता हूँ, हर उम्र के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है।
There are moments in a nation's journey when the sunlight awakens a new dawn of possibilities. As India stood at a crossroad of need and possibility, REC emerged, not as a company, but as a quiet resolve. REC was incorporated to resurrect the agriculture sector by energizing irrigation pump sets, marking a giant leap for the Indian agrarian economy. Since then, we have diversified into new technologies and financed over 100,000 megawatt of energy. We are now one of the biggest financial institutions in the country, funding generation, transmission, distribution, and renewable energy projects. The future is now, and we are constantly reinventing ourselves to stay ahead of the times.
As India strides towards the vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047, CGEW stands committed to building not just homes, but a foundation of dignity, welfare, and inclusive progress for the backbone of our nation, our central government employees. This year's theme, Urban Solutions to Crisis, speaks directly to the heart of CGEW's mission, a mission they've upheld for over 35 years, and that is to serve those who serve the nation. From its inception, CGEW has seen housing not just as infrastructure, but as a right, a vital foundation for inclusive and dignified urban living. With a pan-India footprint, CGEW has successfully delivered quality housing projects across the nation, from metros to emerging cities, ensuring that central government employees have access to secure and affordable homes wherever duty takes them. The year 2024 to 25 marked significant progress. Among its proudest milestones is the Chennai Phase 3 project, delivered at just 2,600 rupees per square foot, nearly half the local market rate. Despite limited scope compared to private developers, CGEW recorded dwelling unit sales worth 821 crore rupees in the last financial year, which is a testament to its financial prudence, transparency, and commitment to affordable housing. Several other projects in Greater Noida, Kolkata, SAS Nagar Mohali Punjab, and Visakhapatnam are progressing steadily, guided by strict timelines and quality benchmarks. Looking ahead, CGEWHO is actively planning future developments in Greater Noida Phase 3, Meerut, Bhopal, Vaishali and Navi Mumbai. They are also in the process of acquiring prime land in cities like Lucknow, Raipur, Kolkata and Puducherry. A nationwide demand survey across 16 urban centers is shaping this strategy, ensuring each project aligns with the evolving needs of government employees. Transparency remains a cornerstone. All current projects are RERA registered with third-party audits by premier institutes like IITs and government engineering colleges. Participatory monitoring committees involving allottees and ministry officials ensure oversight, trust and community-driven execution. CGEWHO is also embracing the future from sustainable construction methods to digital service delivery for applications, tracking and grievance redressal. New formats are on the horizon including compact housing and senior citizen-friendly designs, reflecting the diverse needs of today's government workforce. These achievements are the result of tireless efforts by CGEWHO staff, with steadfast guidance from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and its governing bodies. CGEWHO renews its promise, not just to build houses, but to create homes of dignity, equality and opportunity for those who serve the nation and for generations to come.
I would say that dedicated freight corridor is the jewel of Indian Railways.
India dreamt of a new future with a faster, safer and smarter freight network. A vision to create a dedicated pathway for the nation's lifeline, its cargo. That vision became a mission. Dedicated freight corridors.
उगती हुई हरियाली में, सोने सी हर बाली में, हर सुबह चाय की प्याली में और घर घर की खुशहाली में, प्रदूषण मुक्त हो आसमान, दुनिया भर में अपने निशान, आत्मनिर्भर हिंदुस्तान, गेल इंडिया जिसकी पहचान।
Every great journey begins with a resolute step. India's journey in infrastructure started with early recognition of its importance, which gained traction from the mid-2000s onwards. Established in 2006 by the Government of India, India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited or IIFCL finances key infrastructure projects from roads and power to renewable energy, airports, seaports and urban development. IIFCL, funding foundation of the future.
तू ही मेरी एक वजह है, तू ही मेरी ऊर्जा है, तू ही मेरी राहों का नूर, तू मेरा फ्यूल हो, तुझी से मैं चलता हूँ, तेरे लिए जलता हूँ, तुझी से मैं हुआ मशहूर।
उत्तर के पहाड़ों से दक्षिण के किनारों तक, पहले इंडियन फिर ऑयल, इंडियन ऑयल।
प्लीज विद्या मेरी मदद कर दे। पर मेरा स्कूल बैग उठाना पड़ेगा पक्का। स्कूल प्रोजेक्ट बनाना है ग्रीन एनर्जी पर, और मुझे कुछ नहीं पता। ग्रीन एनर्जी मतलब रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, जैसे सोलर और विंड एनर्जी।
With the aim to achieve half of installed capacity from clean energy sources, we are creating a greener future because every step we take nature along.
मेरा बैग।
From oil-rich lands where dreams ignite, Oil India Limited fuels the nation day and night. As India's flag bearer in oil and natural gas exploration, we have been powering dreams for over 60 years. With operations spanning 7 countries, we drive industries, energize economies, and spark innovation. Rooted in legacy, committed to sustainability, we are building futures, uplifting communities, and empowering generations. A Maharatna of India, proud and true. Oil India Limited, energizing lives for you.
RVNL today has evolved into a global infrastructure powerhouse, laying the foundations of a future-ready India. From railways to metros, from highways to harbors, from tunnels to solar power, RVNL is transforming the infrastructure landscape across India and beyond. From concept to commissioning, Rail Vikas Nigam Limited, empowering progress, delivering excellence.
For our next conversation, we have with us the Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh, Vishnu Desai, a distinguished tribal leader and a pivotal figure in the state's governance. Sai has played a key role in shaping Chhattisgarh's development priorities and advancing initiatives focused on empowerment, progress, and inclusive growth. We spoke with him as the state was tackling and racing to complete its deadline to end left-wing extremism. मुख्यमंत्री विष्णु देसाई, हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आप हमसे हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स लीडरशिप समिट के वर्चुअल सेशन पे बात कर रहे हैं। मैं सबसे पहले आपसे ये पूछना चाहूंगी कि पिछले कुछ दिनों में जो छत्तीसगढ़ से सबसे बड़ी खबर जो बाहर आई है वो है वामपंथी अतिवादी को भाजपा सरकार का ये अनाउंस करना कि आप मार्च 2026 तक इसे खत्म कर देंगे। और मुझे सुनने में आया है कि हमारे जो वहाँ पे संवाददाता है वो कह रहे हैं, ऐसे भी रिपोर्ट हैं कि आप 26 जनवरी तो मतलब डेडलाइन के कुछ दिन पहले ही इसे आप कर पाएंगे। क्या ये सच है?
जी बिल्कुल। हमारा ये छत्तीसगढ़ प्रदेश के विकास में एक बहुत बड़ा बाधक ये नक्सलवाद था और अभी हमारी सरकार को आने वाले 13 दिसंबर को 2 वर्ष पूरे होंगे। 13 दिसंबर 2023 में सरकार शपथ लिया और उसके बाद डबल इंजन की सरकार बनने के कारण हम लोगों ने नक्सलवाद के साथ मजबूती के साथ हमारे जवानों ने लड़ाई शुरू की और माननीय केंद्रीय गृह मंत्री श्री अमित शाह जी का भी बहुत आशीर्वाद हमारे प्रदेश को मिला और हमारे जवान बहुत उत्साह के साथ नक्सलवाद के साथ लड़ाई लड़ रहे हैं। और माननीय केंद्रीय गृह मंत्री जी ने और माननीय हमारे देश के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री जी ने ये संकल्प भी लिया है कि 31 मार्च 2026 को पूरे देश से नक्सलवाद को समाप्त करना है। और हमारे जवान बहुत मजबूती के साथ लड़ाई लड़ रहे हैं। अभी तक 487 से ज्यादा माओवाद न्यूट्रलाइज हो चुके हैं, जिसमें बड़े बड़े माओवाद भी हैं और लगातार उनका आत्मसमर्पण भी हो रहा है, गिरफ्तारियां भी हो रही हैं। और मुझे पूरा भरोसा है कि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का और माननीय गृह मंत्री जी का जो संकल्प है वो अवश्य पूरा होगा।
तो सर ये क्या, ये 26 जनवरी तक ही खत्म कर देंगे आप लोग?
अब ये तो 31 मार्च 2026 तक का संकल्प है और उसके पहले भी संकल्प पूरा हो सकता है।
तो ये जो आपने जैसे कहा, ये जो नक्सलवादी जो प्रॉब्लम है सर, ये हम 70 के दशक से सुनते आ रहे हैं और ये सारे सरकारों के लिए ये बहुत ही बड़ा चैलेंज रहा है। तो जब से आप लोगों ने इसकी प्रतिज्ञा की है कि इसको लड़ने की, तो सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज आपके लिए, राज्य सरकार के लिए, वो क्या था?
देखिए, एक तो हमारा ये प्रदेश बहुत ही समृद्ध प्रदेश है, खनिज संपदा से भरपूर है, वन संपदा से भरपूर है, यहाँ की मिट्टी भी उर्वरा शक्ति से भरपूर है। लेकिन छत्तीसगढ़ के विकास में ये माओवाद बहुत बड़ा बाधक था और छत्तीसगढ़ के विकास के लिए इसका खात्मा बहुत ही आवश्यक था। और डबल इंजन की सरकार के कारण माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का, माननीय केंद्रीय गृह मंत्री जी का आशीर्वाद मिला, उन्होंने संकल्प लिया और हमारे जवान उत्साह के साथ माओवाद के साथ लड़ रहे हैं और लगातार ऑपरेशंस में सफलता मिल रही है। और अब हमको ये विश्वास है कि संकल्प अवश्य पूरा होगा।
जो हमारे जो संवाददाता हैं और वो वहाँ पे इस बारे में काफ़ी रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, उनका ये कहना है कि अब 3 जो सबसे ज़्यादा ज़िले हैं जहाँ पे सबसे ज़्यादा माओवादी हमले और ज़्यादा इंस्टेंसेस होते हैं, बीजापुर, नारायणपुर और सुकमा, इन तीनों जगह की अगर हम बात करें तो यहाँ पर ऑन द ग्राउंड इस वक्त क्या चल रहा है?
देखिए, वहां भी ऑपरेशन चल रहे हैं और कल ही बड़ी संख्या में माओवादी आत्मसमर्पण किए हैं, करीब 37, जिसमें कई 8-8 लाख के इनामी भी थे। और ऐसे 37 माओवादी कल आत्मसमर्पण किए हैं और लगातार आत्मसमर्पण करने वालों की संख्या बढ़ते ही जा रही है, क्योंकि हम लोग का पुनर्वास नीति भी बहुत अच्छी है। अभी तक 2336 से ज्यादा माओवादियों ने आत्मसमर्पण किया है, 1853 की गिरफ्तारी हुई है और अभी तक ये करीब 2 वर्षों में 487 माओवाद न्यूट्रलाइज भी हुए हैं।
तो ये जो इतने हजार जो लोग हैं जिन्होंने सरेंडर किया है सर, इनका आप लोगों ने शायद इनका रिहैबिलिटेशन, वो समाज में वापस फिर से कैसे आएंगे, नौकरी कैसे करेंगे, तो कैसे आप इसका इंश्योर करेंगे कि ये लोग वापस वही माओवादी जो उनका लाइफस्टाइल है उसमें वापस ना चले जाए, उनका जो रिहैबिलिटेशन हो वो ठीक तरह हो, इसकी कैसे आप गारंटी दे सकते हैं?
एक तो बहुत अच्छी पुनर्वास नीति हम लोगों ने बनाया है और इसमें जो आत्मसमर्पण कर रहे हैं उनको 3 वर्षों तक प्रत्येक महीने 10-10 हजार रुपये आर्थिक सहयोग करेंगे, उनका स्किलिंग कराएंगे, स्किलिंग करा भी रहे हैं, रोजगार से जोड़ने का काम कर रहे हैं। हम स्वयं कई केंद्रों में गए हैं जहां पर उनका प्रशिक्षण चल रहा है। अभी तो जगदलपुर में एक पंडुम कैफे इन्होंने खोला है, जिसमें आत्मसमर्पित और पीड़ित लोग एक अच्छा होटल का व्यवसाय शुरू किए हैं, जिसमें बहुत लोग आ रहे हैं और बहुत वहां पर खुश हैं। और हम लोग ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में जो पुनर्वास नीति के तहत उनको 1 हेक्टेयर खेती करने के लिए जमीन का भी प्रावधान किए हैं। शहरी क्षेत्रों में 4 डिसमिल मकान वगैरह बनाने के लिए भी किए हैं। और जो इनामी जो माओवादी हैं, अब सरेंडर करने के बाद उनका जो इनाम उनके ऊपर रखा गया था उसको भी उन्हीं को देने का प्रावधान किए हैं। तो इस तरह से आगे उनको स्वावलंबी बनाने के लिए स्किलिंग का भी और हर तरह से खेती या जो भी वो लोग धंधा कर सकते हैं ये हम लोग की पुनर्वास नीति में है और इसका अच्छा परिणाम देखने को मिल रहा है। साथ ही उस क्षेत्र में हम लोग नियत नेलानार योजना, आपका सुंदर गांव योजना मतलब शुरू किए हैं, जिसके तहत अभी तक 327 गांवों को हम लोग आबाद कर चुके हैं। वहां पर नियत नेलानार योजना के माध्यम से सड़क, बिजली, पानी वहां पर पहुंचा रहे हैं। स्कूल वहां पर खुल रहे हैं, अस्पताल खुल रहे हैं, राशन कार्ड बन रहे हैं। पहले वहां पर राशन भी नहीं पहुंचता था। दूर संचार के साधन वहां पर हो रहे हैं। और मैं आपको ये बताना चाहूंगा कि हम लोग वहां के लोगों को विकास की मुख्यधारा से जोड़ने के लिए पिछले साल भी बस्तर ओलंपिक का आयोजन कराए थे। तो पिछले साल युवा लोग 1,65,000 उसमें भाग लिए थे, लेकिन इस साल करीब 3.25 लाख लोग उसमें मतलब शामिल हुए हैं। और अभी बस्तर ओलंपिक चल रहा है। संभवतः आने वाला 13 दिसंबर को इसका समापन होगा और माननीय केंद्रीय गृह मंत्री जी उसमें पधारेंगे। उसी तरह से बस्तर पंडुम का भी पिछले साल आयोजन किए थे। बस्तर क्षेत्र की लोगों की जो वेशभूषा है, वाद्य यंत्र है, उनका नृत्य है, ऐसे 7 थीम को लेकर आयोजन किए थे, जिसमें 47,000 लोग हिस्सा लिए थे। तो अभी बस्तर ओलंपिक के बाद फिर हम लोग बस्तर पंडुम भी करेंगे और मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि पिछले साल से भी ज्यादा लोग बस्तर पंडुम में भी भाग लेंगे। तो इस तरह से उस क्षेत्र के लोग माओवाद से मुक्ति चाहते हैं और विकास की मुख्यधारा से जुड़ना चाहते हैं। ये जो इवेंट हम लोग करवा रहे हैं, इसमें लोगों का उत्साह ये प्रमाणित करता है।
सर, अभी जो डीजीपी कॉन्फ्रेंस अभी खत्म हुआ, आपके ही रायपुर में पहली बार हो रहा था, तो मैं जानना चाहती हूँ कि इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ये जो आप लोगों की जो ये पूरी ये जो अभियान चल रही है माओवादियों के खिलाफ, ये इस बारे में बातचीत मतलब किस हद तक हुई इस डीजीपी कॉन्फ्रेंस में?
अब देखिए, ये तो छत्तीसगढ़ के लिए सौभाग्य का विषय था कि 3 दिन का डीजीपी कॉन्फ्रेंस यहाँ पर छत्तीसगढ़ में संपन्न हुआ, जिसमें 3 दिनों तक हमारे देश के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आदरणीय केंद्रीय गृह मंत्री श्री अमित शाह जी, केंद्रीय गृह राज्य मंत्री और पूरे देश भर के डीजीपी और सशस्त्र बल के सभी जवान, मतलब सशस्त्र बल के हेड पूरे देश के यहाँ पर पधारे हुए थे। ये सौभाग्य का विषय था। हमारे प्रदेश को उनका स्वागत करने का सौभाग्य मिला। लेकिन अब बैठक में तो हम लोग शामिल नहीं थे। बैठक में तो क्या चर्चा हुई वो समाचार के माध्यम से ही हम लोग को जानकारी मिली है। लेकिन पूरे देश की कानून व्यवस्था पर और एआई को कैसे ज्यादा उपयोग कर सकते हैं, इन सब विषयों पर चर्चा हुई है। ये मीडिया के माध्यम से हम लोग को पता चला है, क्योंकि हम लोग बैठक में अपेक्षित नहीं थे।
इस मुद्दे पे मैं एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन ये पूछना चाहूंगी कि बहुत हद तक सर इतने दिन और इतने दशक जो माओवादी की जो हिंसा है वो चलती रही और इतने सारे लोग इसके प्रभावित हो गए, वो इस वजह से था कि लोगों को लगता था कि विकास में कमी है और या फिर वो कभी कभी शिक्षा की भी प्रॉब्लम है उन जगहों में। तो इसका पूरा जो ओवरऑल टैकलिंग सिचुएशन है वहाँ के जो गांव के लोग हैं जो कई बार उनसे सहानुभूति रखते हैं, आप लोग उनको कैसे तैयार कर रहे हैं कि और उनको कैसे कंडीशन किया गया है इसके लिए?
देखिए, हम लोग ये जानते हैं कि माओवाद को समाप्त करना ही पर्याप्त नहीं है, बल्कि उस क्षेत्र में विकास को भी पहुंचाना पड़ेगा। और इसीलिए मैंने बताया कि नियत नेलानार योजना हम लोग चला रहे हैं और जिसके माध्यम से सरकार की जो योजनाएं हैं उनको प्राथमिकता से उन क्षेत्रों में पहुंचा रहे हैं। जैसे जैसे सुरक्षा कैंप खुल रहे हैं, वैसे वैसे हम लोग सरकार की सुविधाओं को पहुंचा पाने में सफल हो रहे हैं। और अभी तक 327 से ज्यादा गांवों में हर तरह की जो सरकार की सुविधा है, सड़क, बिजली, पानी, राशन कार्ड, स्कूल, अस्पताल, इन सब सारी सुविधाओं को वहां पर पहुंचा पा रहे हैं और लगातार विकास को पहुंचाते रहेंगे और उस क्षेत्र में लोगों को एग्रीकल्चर के सेक्टर में भी आगे बढ़ाएंगे, क्योंकि उनका मूल पेशा खेती है और पर्यटन की भी अपार संभावनाएं हैं बस्तर क्षेत्र में। और हम लोग की नई उद्योग नीति में पर्यटन को उद्योग का दर्जा दिए हैं और होम स्टे वगैरह है उसको बहुत आगे बढ़ाएंगे। पशुपालन को भी हम लोग उस क्षेत्र में बढ़ा रहे हैं। प्रत्येक परिवार को 2-2 गायें दे रहे हैं और एनडीडीबी राष्ट्रीय डेयरी विकास बोर्ड से सरकार का समझौता हुआ है। पशुपालन में ये संस्था सहयोग करेगी और छोटे छोटे उस क्षेत्र के जो हमारे युवा लोग हैं उनको छोटे छोटे उद्योग धंधों से भी, जैसे आपका राइस मिल है, ये सब से भी उनको जोड़ने का काम कर रहे हैं ताकि वो बेकार नहीं रहे। आगे सबको स्किलिंग करा के उनको रोजगार से जोड़ने का भी काम चल रहा है।
बिल्कुल सर, अगर हम इससे थोड़ा सा रिलेटेड लेकिन एक अलग जो मुद्दा है वो है एसआईआर का, जो कि कई सारे राज्यों में चल रहा है। तो कई लोग जो हैं जो छत्तीसगढ़ या अपना में जो उनका घर है वो 2-3 दशक पहले छोड़ के गए थे, अब वो वापस आ रहे हैं क्योंकि एसआईआर हो रहा है, उन्हें अपना नाम जो है वो वोटर लिस्ट में देखना है। लेकिन उनके घर कुछ केसेस में उनके घर नक्सलवादियों ने जला दिया है। तो उन केसेस में जहाँ पे उनको अपने कागजात नहीं मिल रहे हैं, उनका घर भी शायद वहाँ पे नहीं है क्योंकि वो इतने दिनों बाद वापस आ रहे हैं, आप लोग और जो आपकी सरकार है उसे कैसे टैकल कर रही है?
देखिए, हम लोगों ने तो एसआईआर का स्वागत किया है और ये बहुत अच्छा पहल है चुनाव आयोग का। काहे कि इसमें एक तो जो फेक मतदाता हैं उसमें पाबंदी लगेगी। 2-2, 3-3 जगह नाम है तो एक जगह नाम होगा। तो बड़ा अच्छा ये चल रहा है, लोकतंत्र को और मजबूत करेगा ये एसआईआर। और इसमें अभी 1 सप्ताह का समय फिर बढ़ गया है, लेकिन एसआईआर के क्षेत्र में हमारे प्रदेश में अच्छा काम हो रहा है और जो भी प्रॉब्लम आ रहे हैं हम लोग तक वो समस्या आ रही तो उसका समाधान भी कर रहे हैं।
कुछ आप डिटेल्स देना चाहेंगे कि किस तरीके की चैलेंजेस आ रहे हैं और आप लोग कैसे उसका समाधान कर रहे हैं?
ये तो अभी तक बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम नहीं आए हैं यहाँ पर, जहाँ तक मेरी जानकारी में, और हमने सबको हिदायत दे रखा है कि किसी को कोई परेशानी नहीं होनी चाहिए।
मुख्यमंत्री जी, आप लोगों की सरकार जो है, आप लोगों ने एक ऐलान किया था कि आप बहुत जल्द एक एंटी कन्वर्जन का कानून लाएंगे जो कि बाकी राज्यों से और ज्यादा सख्त होगा, तो इसके बारे में जरा हमें बताएंगे।
वैसे तो हमारे प्रदेश में कानून है धर्मांतरण को लेकर, लेकिन और कड़ा करने की आवश्यकता है और मुझे विश्वास है कि अगले महीने दिसंबर में, अब दिसंबर आ ही गया, आज 1 तारीख है, तो 14 से 17 दिसंबर शीतकालीन सत्र आहूत है। तो इस सत्र में ये विधेयक पारित होने के लिए विधानसभा में आ जाएगा, ऐसा मुझे पूरा भरोसा है। और एक कड़ा होगा और निश्चित रूप से इस कानून बनने से धर्मांतरण में रोक लगेगा।
तो इसकी जरूरत क्यों पड़ी? आप कह रहे हैं कि इस धर्मांतरण का कानून छत्तीसगढ़ में है, लेकिन और ज्यादा सख्ती की क्या जरूरत पड़ी?
देखिए, क्या है, हमारा देश धर्मनिरपेक्ष देश है। कोई भी व्यक्ति अपनी इच्छा से कोई भी धर्म अपना सकता है, लेकिन अगर किसी की अशिक्षा को माध्यम बनाकर किसी को बहला फुसला के, चंगाई को माध्यम बनाकर अगर धर्म परिवर्तन कराया जाता है तो ये किसी भी एंगल में मतलब उचित नहीं है और इसका विरोध होना चाहिए। और कानून जो वर्तमान में है उसके बाद भी वो रुक नहीं रहा है, इसलिए कड़ा कानून लाने की आवश्यकता है।
मुख्यमंत्री जी, जो ईसाई समुदाय है आपके राज्य में, तो कुछ लोगों का ये मान रहा है, जो एक्टिविस्ट हैं उनका ये मानना है कि पिछले कुछ दिनों में उनके खिलाफ कुछ अटैक्स बढ़ गए हैं। जनवरी और जून इस साल के पहले 6 महीनों में ऐसे 50 से ज़्यादा केस सामने आए हैं जहां पे उनको अटैक किया गया अलग अलग तरीके से। तो ये जो लोगों का डर है, समुदाय का जो ये डर है कि अगर आप और सख्ती वाला कानून लाएंगे तो फिर ऑलरेडी उनको लगता है कि उन्हें टारगेट किया जा रहा है और इससे बात बढ़ जाएगी, तो आप उस समुदाय के लोगों को और बाकी लोगों को क्या कहेंगे?
किसी को यहाँ चिंता करने की आवश्यकता नहीं है, लेकिन अगर कोई अपराध करेगा तो उसको तो सख्ती से रोकना भी पड़ेगा और उनके ऊपर कार्रवाई भी करना पड़ेगा। उनसे आग्रह है कि लोगों की अशिक्षा को माध्यम बना के, बहला के, फुसला के, चंगाई के माध्यम से धर्मांतरण बिल्कुल रोक दें। सेवा करें, सेवा के नाम से सौदा मत करें।
लेकिन मुख्यमंत्री जी, आपके पुलिस से भी तो गलती हुई है। अब वो जो केरल के 2 नन थे, वो तो भाजपा के केरल के यूनिट वाले आके उन्हें छुड़ा के ले गए हैं, उनको भी तो पकड़ा गया था ये कह के कि ये कन्वर्शन कर रहे हैं, लेकिन पता चला बिल्कुल गलती हुई है। तो ईसाई समुदाय तो कहेगी कि ऐसे बहुत सारे हैं, वो केरला के थे और वहां पे आपके अपने पार्टी वालों ने इसका प्रोटेस्ट किया। तो गलती तो हो रही है पुलिस से ईसाई समुदाय के खिलाफ।
गलती किसी से भी हो, उस पर कार्रवाई होगी। अगर गलती हुई है किसी से तो वो चाहे पुलिस ही क्यों ना हो, अगर गलती हुई है तो उसकी जांच होगी। हम लोग यहाँ पर बिल्कुल पारदर्शी और निष्पक्ष सरकार देने का काम कर रहे हैं।
तो उसको तो हुए अभी कुछ महीने हो गए सर, आपने पता किया होगा, तो उसमें कुछ आप मानेंगे उसमें उनकी उस केस की जो हैंडलिंग हुई थी, केरल के जो नन थे उनकी जो हैंडलिंग हुई थी, उनको अरेस्ट किया गया, फिर उन्हें छुड़ाने के लिए राजीव चंद्रशेखर जैसे बड़े नेता आए थे रायपुर में उनको छुड़ाने के लिए, तो उस मामले में किस तरीके से गलती हो गई?
अब देखिए, इसमें जांच चल रही है और जांच पूरी होने पर ही वास्तविकता का पता चलेगा कि गलती किसकी है। जी
अच्छा, एक और चीज आपसे पूछनी थी, अगर हम पुलिस की बात करें तो सर, तो एक बहुत बड़ी केस जो कि छत्तीसगढ़ से निकली है वो महादेव ऐप वाले केस की। तो पिछले कुछ दिनों में हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स ने ये स्टोरी को ब्रेक की कि उसके जो सबसे बड़े अभियुक्त हैं रवि उप्पल, जो कि भाग गए थे यूएई में, दुबई में थे, वो अब दुबई से भी कहीं और भाग गए हैं और पता नहीं चल रहा कि वो है कहाँ पर। तो इससे केस को धक्का नहीं लगेगा? इस केस में जो आरोपी हैं उसमें ईडी का कहना है पूर्व मुख्यमंत्री भूपेश बघेल, उनके बेटे, सब लोग इससे जुड़े थे। तो अब इसमें जो सबसे मेन अक्यूज है रवि उप्पल, उनके भाग जाने से ये केस को धक्का नहीं लगता?
देखिए, महादेव ऐप के माध्यम से हमारे प्रदेश के लोगों के साथ खिलवाड़ हुआ था और इसकी जांच केंद्रीय एजेंसी कर रही है। और जो इसमें मेन अपराधी है रवि उप्पल, ये लापता है और उसका एक सहयोगी जो सौरभ चंद्राकर है वो दुबई से गिरफ्तार भी हुआ है और फिलहाल वो हाउस अरेस्ट में है और भारत उसके लिए प्रत्यर्पण की मांग कर रही है और केंद्रीय एजेंसी है, कब तक कोई भागेगा, आखिर एक दिन तो पकड़ में आएगा ही।
जी, आप लोगों ने कोई स्पेशल रिक्वेस्ट भेजी है? क्योंकि लोग बहुत ही इसमें आश्चर्य हुआ लोगों को ये जानकर कि वो दुबई से भाग भी गया, निकल भी गए किसी और देश पे, लेकिन यूएई की सरकार ने हमें इस बारे में बताया भी नहीं, इस बारे में इन्फॉर्म भी नहीं किया। तो आपको भी आश्चर्य हुआ?
केंद्रीय एजेंसियां जांच कर रही हैं और ये अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मानकों पर जांच कर रही हैं। हम लोग सरकार के माध्यम से बराबर निगरानी में हैं, उनके संपर्क में हैं।
मुख्यमंत्री जी, फाइनल क्वेश्चन मैं आपसे ये पूछूंगी कि 25 साल हो गए हैं, आप कह रहे थे कि अभी वो आपको भी 2 साल होने जा रहे हैं मुख्यमंत्री बने हुए, छत्तीसगढ़ को बने हुए, फाउंडेशन ऑफ छत्तीसगढ़ 2000 में हुआ था, 25वीं सालगिरह है। तो आपको क्या लगता है कि जो पूरा ऑब्जेक्टिव जो था, जो लोग सोच के आए थे कि एक हमारा अपना अलग राज्य होगा और उससे लोगों को ये एडवांटेजेस मिलेंगी, तो छत्तीसगढ़ के लोगों को वो सारे एडवांटेजेस मिले हैं या फिर किसी तरह से वो पीछे रह गए हैं? जैसे कि कुछ लोगों का ये मानना है कि उत्तराखंड भी उसी समय बना था जबकि छत्तीसगढ़, लेकिन उत्तराखंड की जो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट हुई है वो छत्तीसगढ़ से बहुत ज़्यादा हुई है, हालांकि छत्तीसगढ़ के पास मिनरल रिसोर्सेस बहुत ज़्यादा हैं।
जी बिल्कुल, हमारे प्रदेश को निर्माण हुए 25 वर्ष पूरे हुए हैं और हम लोग रजत जयंती महोत्सव मना रहे हैं और 15 अगस्त से शुरू किए हैं 25 सप्ताह हम लोग मनाएंगे अगले साल फरवरी तक। और इस अवसर पर सबसे पहले तो छत्तीसगढ़ के निर्माता भारत रत्न श्रद्धेय इस देश के पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री श्रद्धेय अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी को नमन करना चाहेंगे पूरे छत्तीसगढ़ की 3 करोड़ जनता के तरफ से। उन्होंने 1 नवंबर 2000 को छत्तीसगढ़ राज्य निर्माण करके दिया, ये सोचकर कि ये जो जनजातीय बाहुल्य क्षेत्र है जहां पर 32% जनजाति समाज रहता है तो उनका समुचित विकास हो, और 25 वर्षों में निश्चित रूप से विकास हुआ है। एक तो उन्होंने छत्तीसगढ़ राज्य निर्माण के साथ ही पहली बार इस देश में भारत सरकार में आदिम जाति कल्याण मंत्रालय का भी गठन किया, अलग से सेपरेट एक बजट देकर कि देश भर के जनजातीय समाज का विकास हो, और इसका भी बहुत लाभ हमारे छत्तीसगढ़ को मिला। आदिम जाति कल्याण विभाग के माध्यम से बहुत पैसे यहाँ पर पुल पुलिया सड़क सबके लिए आया और बहुत विकास हुआ है। और 25 वर्षों में एक तो यहाँ पर अभिशाप था कि लोग को खाने को कुछ मिलता नहीं था, कोदो कुटकी महुआ खाते थे, उसके बाद भी बच्चों को उपवास सोना पड़ता था, भूख से लोग मरते थे। छत्तीसगढ़ राज्य बनने के बाद यहाँ का जो अभिशाप था, कलंक था, ये भूखमरी, वो यहाँ से भागा। तो हम समझते हैं कि छत्तीसगढ़ राज्य निर्माण का ये सबसे बड़ा कोई अगर उपलब्धि है, उपलब्धि तो अनेकों हैं लेकिन ये सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि है। और हमारे उस समय के पूर्व मुख्यमंत्री डॉक्टर रमन सिंह एक ऐसा पीडीएस प्रणाली लाए जो पूरे देश में विख्यात हुआ, वो चाउर वाले बाबा के नाम से विख्यात भी हुए, और आज कहीं छत्तीसगढ़ में कोई भूखमरी नहीं है और हर तरह से विकास हुआ। माननीय अटल जी ने प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना की भी शुरुआत की, उससे भी हमारे छत्तीसगढ़ के सभी गांव 12मासी रोड से डामर रोड से जुड़े, स्कूलें खुली, अस्पताल खुले। आज शिक्षण की सारी संस्थान हमारे छत्तीसगढ़ के अंदर में है, चाहे वो आईआईटी हो, आईआईएम हो, ट्रिपल आईटी हो। विकास में बाधक था नक्सलवाद, उसको भी समाप्त करने में हमारी सरकार डबल इंजन की सरकार होने के कारण यहाँ पर सफल हो पा रही है। तो अगर हम 25 वर्षों का उपलब्धि गिनाए तो बहुत होगा।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सर, आपने समय निकाला हमारे लिए, हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स के लिए, और हमसे बातचीत की। आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
जी आपका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
I am the future that was born 100 years ago. I am the purpose that emerged with India's independence to be a force for business that makes doing good our business. Towards an independence where knowledge sets us free. To think big and achieve bigger. To take India to the world and the world to India. Creating pathways of self-reliance to stand for progress, the planet and the people. Towards a future made perfect and be a force creating abundance. Because independence is not a moment in history. It's a never-ending path to prosperity. Aditya Birla Group, a force for good.
कस्टमर लॉयल्टी रिवॉर्ड 55 इंच का टीवी 4,999 रुपए में. Too good to be true.
अननोन कंपनी अननोन सेंडर यानी पक्का स्कैम. केस सॉल्व.
करेक्ट. स्कैम के खिलाफ गूगल के साथ आओ, स्कैम पहचानो, मौका कमाओ.
Imagination in flight begins with a sheet of paper, a couple folds, and a simple throw. But for some, the exhilaration and wonder behind flight never fades. At GE Aerospace, we turn what-ifs into what's next. Because when the right idea catches the wind, there's no limit to how far the next generation will go.
In every step, there's a spark of joy. A little sparkle through laughter, through friendship, through streets that tell 1,000 stories. With Bata, make your way to the moments that matter with Brighter Moments collection. This festive season, style begins at ₹799. Bata, make your way. Visit your nearest Bata store.
Blessed with breathtaking natural beauty, vibrant tribal culture, and rich heritage its identity. Where there are vast reserves of mineral wealth, the new growth engine of New India. Writing a new saga of development under good governance. Chhattisgarh, a state like no other. From Bastar to Sarguja. Chhattisgarhiya, sable badhiya.
ये किसने दिया?
ये हमने दिया है. सभी चाहते हैं अपने बच्चों की आज की नहीं, कल की जरूरतों को भी पूरा करें. इसीलिए हमने चुना है एनपीएस वात्सल्य, जो सालाना 1,000 रुपए के निवेश से भी शुरू हो जाता है.
एनपीएस वात्सल्य आप 18 वर्ष तक के बच्चों के लिए ले सकते हैं, जो 18 वर्ष बाद खुद ही एनपीएस अकाउंट में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा।
इसीलिए कहता हूँ हर उम्र के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है।
There are moments in a nation's journey when the sunlight awakens a new dawn of possibilities. As India stood at a crossroad of need and possibility, REC emerged, not as a company, but as a quiet resolve. REC was incorporated to resurrect the agriculture sector by energizing irrigation pump sets, marking a giant leap for the Indian agrarian economy. Since then, we have diversified into new technologies and financed over 100,000 megawatt of energy. We are now one of the biggest financial institutions in the country, funding generation, transmission, distribution, and renewable energy projects. The future is now, and we are constantly reinventing ourselves to stay ahead of the times.
As India strides towards the vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047, CGEW-HO stands committed to building not just homes, but a foundation of dignity, welfare, and inclusive progress for the backbone of our nation, our central government employees. This year's theme, Urban Solutions to Crisis, speaks directly to the heart of CGEW-HO's mission, a mission they've upheld for over 35 years, and that is to serve those who serve the nation. From its inception, CGEW-HO has seen housing not just as infrastructure, but as a right, a vital foundation for inclusive and dignified urban living. With a pan-India footprint, CGEW-HO has successfully delivered quality housing projects across the nation, from metros to emerging cities, ensuring that central government employees have access to secure and affordable homes wherever duty takes them. The year 2024 to 25 marked significant progress. Among its proudest milestones is the Chennai Phase 3 project, delivered at just 2,600 rupees per square foot, nearly half the local market rate. Despite limited scope compared to private developers, CGEW-HO recorded dwelling unit sales worth 821 crore rupees in the last financial year, which is a testament to its financial prudence, transparency, and commitment to affordable housing. Several other projects in Greater Noida, Kolkata, SAS Nagar, Mohali, Punjab, and Visakhapatnam are progressing steadily, guided by strict timelines and quality benchmarks. Looking ahead, CGEW-HO is actively planning future developments in Greater Noida Phase 3, Meerut, Bhopal, Vaishali, and Navi Mumbai. They are also in the process of acquiring prime land in cities like Lucknow, Raipur, Kolkata, and Puducherry. A nationwide demand survey across 16 urban centers is shaping this strategy, ensuring each project aligns with the evolving needs of government employees. Transparency remains a cornerstone. All current projects are RERA registered, with third-party audits by premier institutes like IITs and government engineering colleges. Participatory monitoring committees involving allottees and ministry officials ensure oversight, trust, and community-driven execution. CGEW-HO is also embracing the future from sustainable construction methods to digital service delivery for applications, tracking, and grievance redressal. New formats are on the horizon, including compact housing and senior citizen-friendly designs, reflecting the diverse needs of today's government workforce. These achievements are the result of tireless efforts by CGEW-HO staff, with steadfast guidance from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and its governing bodies. CGEW-HO renews its promise, not just to build houses, but to create homes of dignity, equality, and opportunity for those who serve the nation and for generations to come.
I would say that dedicated freight corridor is the jewel of Indian Railways.
India dreamt of a new future with a faster, safer and smarter freight network. A vision to create a dedicated pathway for the nation's lifeline, its cargo. That vision became a mission. Dedicated freight corridors.
उगती हुई हरियाली में, सोने सी हर बाली में, हर सुबह चाय की प्याली में और घर घर की खुशहाली में, प्रदूषण मुक्त हो आसमान, दुनिया भर में अपने निशान, आत्मनिर्भर हिंदुस्तान, गेल इंडिया जिसकी पहचान।
Every great journey begins with a resolute step. India's journey in infrastructure started with early recognition of its importance, which gained traction from the mid-2000s onwards. Established in 2006 by the Government of India, India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited or IIFCL finances key infrastructure projects from roads and power to renewable energy, airports, seaports and urban development. IIFCL, funding foundation of the future.
तू ही मेरी एक वजह है, तू ही मेरी ऊर्जा है, तू ही मेरी राहों का नूर, तू मेरा फ्यूल हो, तुझी से मैं चलता हूँ, तेरे लिए जलता हूँ, तुझी से मैं हुआ मशहूर।
उत्तर के पहाड़ों से दक्षिण के किनारों तक पहले इंडियन फिर ऑयल, इंडियन ऑयल।
प्लीज विद्या मेरी मदद कर दे। पे मेरा स्कूल बैग उठाना पड़ेगा पक्का। स्कूल प्रोजेक्ट बनाना है ग्रीन एनर्जी पर और मुझे कुछ नहीं पता। ग्रीन एनर्जी मतलब रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी जैसे सोलर और विंड एनर्जी।
With the aim to achieve half of installed capacity from clean energy sources, we are creating a greener future because every step we take nature along.
मेरा बैग।
From oil-rich lands where dreams ignite, Oil India Limited fuels the nation day and night. As India's flag bearer in oil and natural gas exploration, we have been powering dreams for over 60 years. With operations spanning 7 countries, we drive industries, energize economies, and spark innovation. Rooted in legacy, committed to sustainability, we are building futures, uplifting communities, and empowering generations. A Maharatna of India, proud and true. Oil India Limited, energizing lives for you.
RVNL today has evolved into a global infrastructure powerhouse, laying the foundations of a future-ready India. From railways to metros, from highways to harbours, from tunnels to solar power, RVNL is transforming the infrastructure landscape across India and beyond. From concept to commissioning, Rail Vikas Nigam Limited, empowering progress, delivering excellence.